Intensive diplomatic activity for the United Nations and U.S. Special Envoys in the region amid Houthi escalation. 7 years since Houthi militia coup, famine is still chasing millions of Yemenis nationwide. The joint forces towards Houthi rebels in different fronts in Al-Dola. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fouad. The United Nations envoy Hans Grunberg ended his visit to Muscat as part of his efforts to revive the stalled political process in Yemen. During the visit, Grunberg met with Houthi militia negotiators. He stressed that sustainable peace can only be achieved through a settlement that is reached through peaceful negotiation, which will result in solutions that meet the aspirations of Yemenis.
United Nations and US envoys to Yemen intensified their diplomatic activity in the Middle East to push for a ceasefire agreement while the Houthi militia continue their military escalation towards Marib, Shabwa, Hodeidah governorates and target Saudi lands with drones. During his 2 days visit in Riyadh, the UN Special Envoy underlined his intention to engage in discussions to reach an inclusive political settlement that meets the aspirations of Yemeni men and women. The UN envoy held talks with the Yemeni president, the government, and representatives of political parties. Also, Mr. Grunberg met with the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Naif al-Hajraf, Saudi officials, and the ambassadors to Yemen of the permanent members of the Security Council. 2 days of intensive meetings with the Yemeni officials and the coalition in Riyadh. Mr. Grunberg flew to Muscat, where he met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Sultanate of Oman, Badr al-Busaidi, and other senior Omani officials. He also met with the Houthi militia chief negotiator, Mohammed Abd Salam. Oman continues to play an active and important role for peace in Yemen. Therefore, the conversations were particularly fruitful, Mr. Grunberg said. During his discussions with Houthis, sustainable peace can be only achieved through a peacefully negotiated settlement. It is imperative that all efforts are directed towards pushing a political process that can produce lasting solutions to meet the aspirations of Yemeni women and men, Mr. Grunberg noted. Meanwhile, the U.S. envoy, Tim King, returned to Riyadh again 2 days after leaving, accompanied by the UN envoy, where they worked to remove the obstacles placed by the Houthi militia to accept the United Nations plan to stop the war. The U.S. envoy held a meeting with the Saudi Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adil al-Jubair. They discussed developments on the Yemeni situation. Also, Linda King met with the Parliament Speaker Sultan al-Barakani, where he said that the Houthi recruitment of children and the military escalation are all practices that undermine peace efforts. According to Sabah news agency, the United States' support for establishing peace and for reaching a permanent agreement will continue in cooperation with the efforts of the United Nations envoy and will use all diplomatic channels to establish peace. In response to this diplomatic activity, the Houthi militia continue its rejection of peace plan proposed by the United Nations and stick to the preconditions for its acceptance. The militia also continued their military escalation. They attacked government forces' positions on the outskirts of Shabwa with Al-Bayda governorate. Bayhan and Ain districts witnessed a massive attack by the Houthi militia, which was met with resistance by the government forces and the resistance. In conclusion and beyond slogans, if the international community is determined to bring about peace in Yemen, they have to pressurize Houthis and bring them to the negotiation table. Perhaps only then peace can be attainable.
7 years of the Houthi rebels in control of the capital Sana'a. Yemen is struggling against huge challenges such as war and famine. The United Nations World Food Programme warned that food aid stocks are running out, calling on donors to stick to their commitment. More on the story is in the following report.
Over 5 million people in Yemen are on the brink of famine due to the conflict and the economic decline that have left families struggling to find enough food. Houthis' September setback compounded the problems in the country. Their incursion in the capital Sana'a back in 2014 and their control of the livelihoods of people in Yemen have doubled the trouble in an already poor country. More people every day enter the circle of hunger due to the ongoing ruthless war. The war in Yemen is like a fire that eats everything, with the parties engaged are switching to an economy of war, leaving nothing to the poor people. The conflict led to other problems, such as the increase of refugees and internally displaced people. Those categories raise the current level of hunger in Yemen to unprecedented level. The whole situation has caused severe hardship for millions. According to the World Food Programme, there are more than 20 million who need humanitarian assistance in the country. There are also more than 16 million who are food insecure. The number of displaced people in Yemen is 4 million. In Hajjah, Amran, and Al Jawf, there are pockets in which famine-like conditions are present. The rate of child malnutrition is one of the highest in the world, and the nutrition situation continues to deteriorate. Nearly 2.3 million children under the age of 5 in the country suffer from acute malnutrition. A recent survey showed that almost one-third of the families have gaps in their diets. The humanitarian situation in Yemen is extremely fragile. Any disruption in the pipeline of critical supplies, such as food, fuel, medicine, has a potential to bring millions closer to starvation and death. This is the real situation in the country after 7 years of Houthi coup against the state. Houthis are still controlling the humanitarian aids that come through Hudaydah port and bargain poor Yemeni lives for a wider control and more hardship. The call is now for the international community to have a helping hand for Yemenis in their calamity.
Government forces took up violent battles with Houthi rebels in El Salim area south of Shabwa. In Bahrain, government forces were able to regain some areas. A source said that large military reinforcements came in support of the government forces. The source stated that Shabwa's tribes announced general mobilization to support the government forces and the resistance. In the same context, the International Organization for Migration said that 328 Yemeni families were displaced during the past 2 weeks due to the escalation of hostilities in 4 governorates. The organization indicated that the largest number of displacement cases were recorded in the governorates of El Shabwa, Ma'rib, El Bayda, and El Dala. Joint Forces air defenses shot down 2 Houthi attacks drones south of Hudaydah. The military media of the Joint Forces reported Houthi drone was carrying 40 mm caliber bombs and was shot down while trying to fly over military sites west of Hais. Government forces backed by tribes in Ma'rib launched an attack against Houthi rebels on Abaida front. Also in the front of Sirwah, government forces launched an attack targeting Houthi positions, causing losses in lives and equipment. In addition, coalition jets targeted Houthi reinforcements in the same front. The raids resulted in losses among Houthis, and in El-Qasara and El-Majjah west of Ma'rib, the rebels were inflicted with losses after artillery targeted their gatherings. Coming next. Houthis force owners of private schools to pay teachers in government schools.
ثالثتي على منطقة الروضة استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع يدعي للسلام يقولوا للسلام يقتل أطفالنا يقتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت افتجعت ولا قلنا على واحد صاروخ ثاني طلعت البيت حقنا عشان ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ الطرح.
Welcome back. In continuation of their economic war on Yemenis, Houthi rebels forced the private schools to pay the salaries of the government teachers. This is not the sole act by Houthis to deplete the education system. More on that story is in the following report.
Educational sources in the capital Sana'a, which is under the rule of the Houthi militia coup, revealed that the school administrators received circulars from the militia's Ministry of Education requiring private schools to pay the salaries of a number of teachers in government schools, while the school administration considered it a new Houthi operation to loot and collect taxes. The administration of one of the schools located in the capital Sana'a reported that the Houthi militia imposed on them to pay the salaries of a number of teachers in government schools, while the percentage imposed on each school was not specified. This in turn threatens to close private schools to the doors and stop the educational process in them due to their inability to meet the requirements of the educational process and the salaries of their teachers. Plus, taxes imposed on them is to support the Houthi militia, not to mention the countless Houthi religious occasions, and finally the payment of teachers' salaries in government schools. It's worth noting that the head of the so-called political council in the Houthi coup, Mahdi al-Mashtat, pledged at the beginning of the current academic year that monthly reward would be received by the Ministry of Education for teachers in government schools, amounting to 30,000 Yemeni rials, and the exchange process would begin in early September. It was able to pay the previous amounts and the proposal was postponed to another time. Houthi violations has no end, as they keep forcing people to do things they're not willing to do. How can the Yemeni people survive with Houthis adding pressure to the Yemeni people in all sectors?
Yemen is known for its culture and old civilization. However, Houthi militia since seizing power has been in all ways trying to distort that rich cultural heritage through different ways. The following report sheds light on this story.
The war in Yemen has left a devastating toll not only its population but also on its cultural history, resulting in the destruction of irreplaceable sites and monuments, according to the country's Ministry of Culture. From the start of the war until now, Houthi rebels have attempted to destroy all of Yemen's history. The truth is Yemen is full of historical sites, and the damage that are caused have been through looting or direct destruction. Despite the progress of diplomatic efforts, the Yemeni government continues to accuse the rebels of trying to smuggle stolen antiquities out the country for sale on the black market. The ministry has recorded and documented destroyed monuments and missing manuscripts in a bid to preserve what's left, enable future restoration, and to gather support of the international community. Historical sites such as Sana'a's Old City, the Great Dam of Ma'rib, the archaeological city of Barakesh, and the ancient city of Zabid remain under immense threat. War certainly doesn't make protection of antiquities easy. Looting has also been an issue in addition to destruction. Museums in Taiz, Aden, Abyan, and Damar, to name a few, have either been damaged or looted or both. The United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO, has expressed grave concern over the destruction of cultural sites in Yemen. The agency told The National that it doesn't currently have enough independently verified information to take stock of the loss of Yemen's heritage since the start of the conflict. Thousands of priceless artifacts and manuscripts have been destroyed in the process, and the world is now a poorer place because of it. Mr. Bakkad, Yemen's Deputy Culture Minister, said that Zabid, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was considered a key point for Yemeni forces to advance deeper into rebel-held areas east of Hodeidah. The historical city has been used by the Houthis for military purposes, such as the storage and the stockpiling of ammunition and equipment, Mr. Bakkad said. The sites are often damaged because fighters on both sides, the Houthis and anti-Houthi fighters, use them for protection during an attack, especially the larger structures like castles. The Houthi coup militia continues to suppress Yemeni art and artists in an effort to destroy the kidnapped capital Sana'a and impose its extremist ideas. A dark future and fate awaits Yemenis unless the state is restored and the coup is overthrown. The United Nations and human rights organizations should leave the box of silence and raise their voice by condemning the repression and abuse practiced by the Houthi militia against artists and culture.
Oxfam International reported that Yemen has the highest death rate of COVID-19 infected cases around the world. Mohsen Siddiqui, director of Oxfam's office in Yemen, said that the country has the highest death rate of the pandemic worldwide. He added many of the most vulnerable people are unable to secure food or buy medicines. Others cannot afford reaching medical centers due to the ongoing fuel crisis. The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 37 new cases of the COVID-19 pandemic. Committee officials said on Twitter that 14 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 13 in Aden, 4 in Al-Bayda, 3 in Taiz, 2 in Ma'rib, and 1 in Shabwa. Also 4 deaths were recorded, plus 19 recovered cases. With the total updates, the total confirmed cases are 1,789, including 1,658 deaths and 5,438 recovered cases. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Intensive diplomatic activity for the United Nations and U.S. Special Envoys in the region amid Houthi escalation. 7 years since Houthi militia coup, famine is still chasing millions of Yemenis nationwide. The joint forces thwarted Houthi rebels in different fronts in Al-Dala. This is the end of the news. It was Rushain Fouad. Thank you for watching.